As an engineer, like the choices you make are going to drive like the profits and losses of a business that's building product at the end of the day, right? Because your material selections, your design selections are going to drive process level decisions for production. So understanding the ins and outs of like how those things work together, I think is really what makes a great engineer.
Welcome back to the Manufacturing Come Up. I'm your host, Malachi Greb, also CEO of Elite Automation. The Manufacturing Come Up is a place for you to learn about your career, how to navigate your career. And we have an awesome guest today, Zakary Smith, who went from being a mechanical engineer to the CEO of a company and now is going for his second round of investment. How's it going, Zach?
Yeah, it's great. I'm so happy to be here.
Glad to have you. So definitely, I always admire somebody who has went from, the 9 to 5 and has changed and converted their career to being a business owner, an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur in the tech space. Tell us a little bit about where you're at right now.
Yeah, for sure. So right now, physically, I'm located out in California in San Diego County. So surprisingly, it's actually not that great weather. I know all over North America right now, it's pretty cold. And yeah, I'm CEO of Mata Inventive. We are focused on Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence for industrial operations, everything from CNC machining, plastic injection molding, recycling facilities, the full gamut.
Gotcha. And so explain to the audience a little bit more about what exactly it is your company does.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I have here on my desk, might help a little bit. So this is a little IoT box. You can see in here there's embedded systems. So we write firmware for these devices, and these devices connect to different pieces of equipment within a manufacturing facility. So it could be we add peripheral sensors to this to collect temperatures, proximity, to get in real time how a machine is functioning. Also connect on deeper levels. I know you focus a lot on like PLCs, so we can get data out of PLCs, different controllers, and then we aggregate that data onto the cloud and do like real time analytics to help do alerting, efficiency reports, with our artificial intelligence engine, so companies can remain more profitable, find bottlenecks, put their cash towards reinvesting in their operation versus burning it in areas where they don't need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's inevitable that machines just get smarter as we go along into the future, and the most intelligent machines will be the machines that end up surviving long term. The first step is those who don't automate. They have to automate, and then after they automate, they need to start making their devices smarter and more data ready.
Yep, definitely. And what's cool is depending on the like, not everything will be automated. So there's like the human machine interface. Some things are very people driven still, and we help like
Yep.
collect data on that side of the thing so people know how to help their employees run more efficiently. And some things are completely automated. So how do you help with like feedback loops, precision control, so those processes can run more efficient? And then there's the in between where you have human machine where they're working together. How do you identify like where the bottleneck within that type of process could be? And then across an operation, you might have that full range of like fully manual to fully automated. So it's a complex problem, and no two operations are the same either. So
Right. Absolutely. So what got you into doing smart manufacturing and getting involved in this sector of the industry?
yeah, it's a great question. So it was an evolution of many different things, I would say. So I was always really just passionate about like math, technology, science, STEM. I know a lot of people are. So I blindly went into engineering as a career path through. I studied in Boston at Northeastern University, where I got a dual degree in mechanical engineering and tech entrepreneurship. I always knew I wanted to be involved on the business side of the technology world, but wanted those like really like the foundational learning. And at the program I went to, they have a co-op program, which is it was a 5 year for my undergrad, but within that 5 years, I took 2 full years of full time work experience. So like after my first 2 years of study, every 6 months I was 6 months school, 6 months work, 6 months school, 6 month work, 3 times, and that was just incredible. Like that was really the starting point where I got to learn all different facets of different industries, different technologies, from LED lighting to electroplating of electronics, to lithium-ion battery manufacturing. Those were like the three areas I learned in college while I got my degree. And it wasn't so much even learning about the industries, but the different facets of that go into like manufacturing and engineering a product.
Yeah.
I then, yeah, sorry, you have a question?
No, yeah, I think it's the co-op portion of that is like extremely valuable.
Yeah,
I didn't necessarily do like co-op program, but I worked doing system integration my entire time throughout
yeah.
college, and just like being able to go to school and then go to work
Mhm.
and doing something in the relative field. I was either able to go back to school and have questions like for the professors, like, hey, what about this? Or hey, I'd like to learn more about this on the PLC, or how to two different PLCs communicate with each other. So like these questions that would arise, and they would come from the fact that I was like going to work and then transitioning back and forth between the two. And then I would go to work and I would have learned something at school that I can directly apply to something at work. So then I got this sense of what do you call it? Not urgency, but the sense of importance for like what I'm learning in school versus like I'm just learning this thing I'll never use.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I don't know if I would have stuck with engineering if I didn't get the opportunity to work and learn, like the application of engineering during my education. So, like, as a starting point, I think that was the most important thing to get me where I am today. So, anyone that's thinking of, it doesn't even have to be just engineering, but like really within any form of education and like career direction, is taking the time to work and get experience, because it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to say, hey, like I actually do like this, it's going to reinforce that, and then you have the feedback loop with school like you said, or it might say, hey, this isn't for me. And it's better to learn that earlier on than invest 4+ years of your life to a degree that ultimately you're not going to leverage due to like personal choices and desire. So I think, yeah, it's a great starting point.
Yeah, another unique thing too is like when you went to college, you kind of had the idea that I'm going to do something business related, or I want to do something with the involvement of the business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't necessarily go into college with that type of mindset. Either maybe they don't think about it, maybe don't even think about it as an option. And I think it's something that's an extremely valuable angle to think about potentially doing.
Yeah, and I think it's very accessible for those that are going like through the university route, because alongside your major, there's open courses as part of like a traditional liberal arts that they kind of force you into. And I used those open credits and like hyper focus on the business side of things. So I think instead of taking maybe random, like if business becomes of interest on top of a technological degree, then I think you could stack those additional coursework in that focus area. And
Yeah.
I think like for engineering, there's program management, there's just like financial stuff to learn. There's so much more outside of engineering that engineers use day to day. So I think it's a
Yeah.
good area to focus on for sure.
Yeah, and I think that also it's like to be careful of like just not use like whatever the tailored version of those classes are, because like a lot of times those classes are a little bit like predefined
Mm.
in what they like. Hey, like they want you to do like these classes, even the elective ones. Some of those elective classes, there's the option to take classes outside of what the normal elective is. So even whenever you're looking at like that elective list of classes, sometimes you can even go outside of that and say, hey, I want to do this thing. It's like somewhat similar to this other thing that is on the list.
Mm.
And a lot of times you can get approval from the advisors at the college.
Yeah, and I did part of that too. Is you could like put together your own minor, or you could, like you said, like find coursework that is you could bring into your own studies. So for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, because I did the exact same approach that you did with like I used all my electives towards another degree, and so then that way, whenever I graduated, I had like 2 more semesters with like 3 classes each, and then I graduated with another degree.
What were the 2 degrees that you ended up with?
Industrial automation and robotics, and industrial technologies.
Amazing. Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, how much of a role do you feel that the business side of your degree played in that, in your career? And also one other thing I want to point out real quick is that I think it's important for like engineers to understand the business side of like manufacturing, because everything is really driven because of the business, right? Like all the decisions that are being made, all the numbers, the outputs of machinery, it all really boils back down to the dollar amounts that are being spent and invested in things.
Yeah, definitely. Like as an engineer, like the choices you make are going to drive like the profits and losses of a business that's building product at the end of the day, right? Because your material selections, your design selections are going to drive process level decisions like for production. So understanding the ins and outs of like how those things work together, I think is really what makes a great engineer. Like it's it's less hard to design like a amazing, beautiful product as like a one-off, but for those that are designing product or processes, like the economics of it, they just have to be there. Otherwise, everyone's going to be out of a job within that corporation. That's just the way it works. So, um, yeah, to your point on kind of the focus area on the business side of things within that. So one of the courses I took was like a high growth ventures course, which kind of leads me to where I am today with my current company. So I learned within university about like just like multiples on businesses, which was really fascinating. Where like service level businesses have like a 1x, and then on the high end, like if you have like a SaaS company, it's typically like a 10x multiple on a valuation on an exit. It's less now after the last few years. Those have gone down a bit, but I think there'll actually be a come up on that. Perfect for the name of the podcast. um, so yeah, that's kind of what ultimately I think led me. There was a lot that happened between like then and now, but that's ultimately what I'm focusing on at this point is on a high growth venture.
Gotcha. What so going back to like the college days, what did a course like that look like?
Yeah, it was so the engineering there. So I went to Northeastern University, and within the university, there's a bunch of different colleges. So the engineering and the business colleges are two of the biggest, maybe the biggest. There's a big nursing program, but the colleges work together to put together these integrated programs, which I found really interesting. So when I was taking the business courses, the degree was provided through the engineering department, but the business, it was all through business professors that worked to tailor the courses to people in like technology. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, so there were some basic principles classes. I had luckily done some of those in high school and got credits for it through like local community college, which is also for anyone that is strong on the academic side. Like the more you could preload with community college coursework, APs, like that could really save you a lot of money and progress you like more rapidly through your like you could get a master's in the time you would get an undergrad, or just finish your
Yeah.
undergrad sooner or spend more time towards the work. So that's a really
Yeah.
great tool to use. Yeah, but the professors came from industry. Like the professor that really made a difference to me, he had worked for Gillette for a while, done a lot of stuff on like the razor blade model, which is a well studied like case on give the razor away and sell the blades, right? Like the consumer
Blades.
model.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then they had a program that I learned through the university. This is great too. Is like if you have entrepreneurship programs through your university, and we had it was called NEU Idea, and it was an accelerator program for businesses. And I actually went through that accelerator. I learned about it through this professor, and then went through that accelerator after I graduated, where I was able to access grant money, advisors. It was amazing. It was monumental in kind of starting up. Because I'm sure, as you know, like the startup is the hardest part of a business
Yeah.
in the early days.
Yeah. So what was your transition like out of college? Like what did you initially do and go through that
So
path?
I graduated in 2013 May, so over a decade ago now. And before I did anything, because I worked through all of college, I went to Europe for 40 days, so that was really fun. And then
Nice.
I'm never gonna get a break like this again. So I took some time off, and I had a bunch of fun. And then I packed up my car and I moved to California. The January before I graduated, I got a job at an aerospace company in a place called San Luis Obispo. So I was able to. I always wanted to move out here. Fortunately, like my lifestyle and career goals lined up where I really like surfing, mountain biking, but I love technology, and California is a perfect spot for that for me at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, I practice as a design engineer outside of school, doing business class and first class seat design. So on an advanced concepts team, so we were doing new product dev, helping solve real time manufacturing problems. Just really dug into the technical portion further. I did that for a few years, and then I moved up to San Francisco in Silicon Valley specifically. And I got this is where I transitioned. Really, it was I started as a business development engineer. So I was working for a Woofy, which is a wholly owned foreign enterprise. So the business owner was from the United Kingdom. He had a Hong Kong corporation, and then he had an amazing factory in China. So I was consulting effectively in Silicon Valley for Google and Facebook and Tesla and other startups. And they were leveraging our manufacturing capabilities from this factory. So we were selling product development. So like consulting services and actually building stuff. So I got like really, in that period of time, I helped launch like over 100 products from concept to market. Some notable ones was like the Model 3 battery pack, some of the steering wheels there, Google Loon, Samsung Smartwatch. Ironically, the ventilator that they used for COVID, which they later learned was not a good use of a ventilator. We had gotten that through FDA approval like years before. It's actually a great product for those that need it. And that was my transition to the business side of engineering. I think for anybody that wants to get into the business side of engineering, applications engineering, technical sales engineering, business development engineering is like the place to start. And then over that 5 years, I was able to work my way up to running. I was the global sales director, engineering director for that company, managing like 30 people across 7 different countries. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. So shout out to Star Rapid for a great experience.
What were some of like the key like takeaways or like job tasks that you did that really helped in building your experience?
Yeah, great question. So I would say the one that stands out the most is DFM, Design for Manufacturability. So my job was to help engineers that want to get engineers, procurement, depending on the stage of development, right? If it was early stage, we were working with design engineers. If it was later stage, it would go to procurement, who was then responsible for buying in volume. But yeah, a lot of times when a manufacturer gets files, like not all things were considered to successfully manufacture a product. So there's a period of DFM, design for manufacturability, where the manufacturer gives technical feedback back to the engineering team on recommended changes to either make it manufacturable because it's not, or things that are going to be driving high amounts of cost or potential like quality issues. So I would work at a very technical level with these engineers to maximize the probability of success for their part.
Yeah. And when it comes to like the product design side of things and then going to manufacturing, like some small things like a circular corner versus a square edge corner can make a huge difference in the feasibility of manufacturing.
Yeah, definitely. So the way I like to think about DFM is when you're designing, you start at the manufacturing process, right? Like what process am I going to use? Because different processes dictate different DFM that you need to consider. So like you said, what you're referencing for machining, right? You can't have sharp edges, right? Because the tool bit is like circular, and when it comes into a corner, you need that. Unless you could do things like EDM, right? But that adds a lot of cost. Like you can get sharp corners,
right,
but there's high cost like methodologies to be able to do that. Versus like I did a lot of plastic injection molding as well. So like the DFM for that is completely different than for CNC machining. So that's back to the like for sure it really need to consider what the capabilities within that process is for when you're designing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's like it's a whole entire different sector, and just like the understanding of like you know that process. Like one of the key things that I heard you point out was sometimes you're working with the product developer or you're working with the procurement person,
Mm,
depending on where you're at in the life cycle of the product,
yeah.
right? And a lot of people don't really get the window to see inside of like these processes to give them like a bird's eye view of, oh, okay, that's why the procurement person's involved at this stage. This is why I'm dealing with the developer during this stage. And there's a lot of those things that I wasn't really opened up to until starting Elite Automation, and we started operating our own company. And just like big thing for us was like, or for myself, was understanding the automotive welding sector, and
Mm,
just like and how once a vehicle launches, how there's other like product launches with that, or maybe they're able to reutilize some
mm,
other product that's already in another model vehicle in that same vehicle, like maybe like a Ford F-150 and the Ford Expedition, they use the same console, right?
mhm.
And so that's something that they do on like a manufacturing standpoint that saves them cost, instead of like redeveloping, redesigning, and having different SKU numbers for different parts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like part consolidation, and I'm working on a project right now where this came up this week, where it's like we want to use this part because it's used in 3 other places. So that's super applicable. Yeah, I think the best thing someone could do is like if YouTube's a great resource. So if you're hopping into design, that's a great like if you can't answer like how it's going to be manufactured, you probably shouldn't start on the design until you resolve that portion of it, because otherwise you might have to redo everything you did from the beginning. Unfortunately, with 3D printing today, people have become reliant on the versatility of that, and it's a huge hindrance to engineered products as a whole when things get handed off from that early stage design engineering to like manufacturing engineering and procurement per se.
Gotcha. Do you think it's because they're like not following proper design practices or something?
I think because it could be printed, people put in features that are printable but not machinable, for example. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Definitely.
Okay, so going from there, did you immediately go into launching your own company?
Um, Basically, I worked at a printed circuit board assembly company in the electronic space doing a similar type of role for about 9 months. And then my wife, we were in the Bay Area where she grew up, and she said, "We're moving to San Diego." She wanted to raise a family down here. So this was in February 2020, about 4 years ago now. And then COVID hit. So we had a 6 month old, and we had just moved down here, and the world was taking a turn. And yeah, that's when I founded the business there. And it's like so much has changed in the last 4 years, because like where we started it and where we are now too, like there's a lot we could uncover within that period of time. And this is like I think I've always been passionate about like technology and engineering, but I think this opportunity has been a game changer for sure. So
Gotcha. So what was the transition like? I mean, you definitely transitioned in a strange period of time.
mhm.
I also transitioned during that period of time as well. So
Yeah, so I like bootstrap the company from the ground up. So I had used my skill sets to land some just like consulting contracts, which wasn't necessarily the long term like goal and plan, but how to make ends meet. And I love product development, as you could probably tell. So I was doing some sales engineering consulting, some design engineering consulting, and when I was working in the like through the manufacturing space, and I've been involved in a lot of 3D printing, I had an idea where there's a technology for metal 3D printing and an application for conformal cooling. So that specifically, I don't know, for those that are familiar or not familiar, I actually have a product here that we actually helped to design, and this is injection molded. Pretty cool. It's a foam grip. Shout out to Pro Grip. But so injection molding, you have to like it goes in as a molten material, and it needs to be like super cooled. Like the faster it cools, the faster you can do a cycle, right? And a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
part of the injection molding process, we talk about efficiency, is the cycle time. And by like you could do very interesting things with the cooling lines when you 3D print it. So the hypothesis was that there's this technology and it exists and is known to work, but it's not being leveraged in the masses like it should. So what we did is we used engineering simulation and artificial intelligence to um, very rapidly determine how to leverage cooling through 3D printing and then 3D print tools instead of machine them. So at that point, I put together a business plan, and we went out and raised a seed round to start building the technology. So I mentioned before I went through the accelerator program at my university. So I was involved with that. We got some grant money. We did some prototype. We built one. We validated it. So I was able to go to an investment, like some like angel investors, and raise around that. And there was a very unique piece of the technology on the IoT side where we said, well, why don't we embed sensors in these tools and create a model where we could validate the performance improvement and do like a cost savings model. So we're measuring the cycle time, we're measuring temperatures, pressure. So there's like quality and yield. There's so much involved in that. So the product had multiple facets to it. We ended up filing a patent. So we're waiting to hear back from the patent office on that. But in doing so, when I raised, I was able to partner with my co-founder of Meta Inventive, a gentleman, Dr. Yen. He has a PhD in precision controls, robotics, and artificial intelligence. And he was working on similar technology for the CNC industry. And that's where we merged our two companies because he was looking for a partner more on like the business operation side. I was looking for a technology expert to help build the product. And that happened about 18 months after I formed the original company. So
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that was like a good move for you and for the both of you. I think that that's something that's important and should be thought of. How has that relationship been so far, and how has it helped on the business?
yeah, it's like a second marriage, to be honest. Like, um, it's great. Like and I until I experience it, like I think in our case, 1 + 1 = 3. Like, there's no way. Like, even if I had a second me or he had a second hand, like we just have a different skill set, and there's just like a really nice overlap. And we work really well together. Like I've just continued to be amazed at his capability to build amazing product. Like he does firmware development, back end, front end, and artificial intelligence on top of that. So like having like that support to be able to go out to our customers and see what they're looking for, and build products around kind of what's going to drive value for their business. And like we have a really nice engagement model now where we've been able to like have a foundation of like strong scalable product, and we're starting to move on to the next phase of the business after working with a dozen companies very closely in about 4 different countries over the last several years.
Yeah, I think that it's very common for individuals to start companies and be a product person,
Mm.
right? They're good at like the execution. They did the thing for so long, and so they're like, okay, I'm gonna start a company doing this. But then they go and they start the company, and they don't have the business development side of things. They don't, maybe they're not good at sales, or they don't have those relationships. So there's a huge impact in being able to either find partners or find other individuals within your company that you hire into your company that can really help close some gaps, because it can be significant. It can be life or death of a company.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more to that. So I've had situations where I've failed several times previously finding the wrong partner. Um,
Gotcha.
and I think that for those that are going to take the entrepreneurial route, there's like two things I could say. That is, having a partner is a million times better than not in a business, with diverse skill sets. But like, and just because I learned like someone else might have the skill sets to do a task or build something or do sales, or it doesn't mean that that would make them a good partner. I think that it's really important to find another entrepreneur in that process, because um, it's an additional skill set that it's required at an early stage of a company effectively.
I was say, yeah, there's just like a whole like side of like desire, drive, like all those things will come out of like this individual who's more like entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
It'll be somebody who's like, they're striving for like the vision of this thing, right? Versus like somebody who just has a good skill set in something. They may not have that drive to like want to work extra hours or want to, go out of town or whatever the stretch is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I never knew. I hadn't before this like found someone that was willing to like put in that extra effort. But like, yeah, I mean, we both have gotten very little sleep, and he's gotten even less than me. Like over the last few years, like I mean, he's up till 2 or 3 a.m. every night. We were up at 6 a.m. for a meeting this morning. So it's just like that's and it's not a right or wrong thing. It's just like just some people want to do that and some people don't. But the reality is, if you're starting a business, I've never met someone that isn't like. It seems like it's almost like you have to do that. Unfortunately, it's for a period of time to make things work.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have a ton of experience with like business partners and stuff like that, but I would suspect that the biggest issues with business partnership is like not being in alignment with like either wanting to take money out of the company just for own personal use versus like reinvesting it in the company, the amount of hours that you put into to working, or just like value that you add to the company, right? That there's going to be conflicts in those things, right? Because if those like visions are not aligning, and that's like one of my biggest reasons why I've not really seeked after a partner, and it's like one of the last things I really want to do is just because I have such a concern that somebody won't want to work as hard as I do, they won't want to invest in the way that I want to invest. It's like to some degree I'd rather work, or I'd rather like work as hard as I'm going to work or invest in the way that I'm going to invest to the point of failure, right? I'd rather fail in investing this certain way versus like being stopped by like maybe a partner or something like that says, no, I don't want to do like that. That's too risky. Like, you know what I mean? Or vice versa. Maybe it's something they want to do that's more risky that I'm not willing to go out on a limb for. And or maybe a one big thing could be like a different sector. Maybe I'm not interested in going into like a different sector, or maybe a different business model, or something like that. Yeah, so there's like a lot of things like that to keep in mind whenever seeking after a business partner, or thinking about getting a business partner.
Yeah, and I think if it's better to not have a business partner that doesn't like facilitate that alignment than to have the wrong one. Like it would be more, because then it becomes like a burden on the one of the partners and the business at that point. And I've seen that happen before, and things like operating agreements, membership agreements, or shareholder agreements, like those things become really important to just set and align expectations and boundaries going into it if it's going to be done, to ensure everybody's not doing like their part. They're held accountable. There's another aspect to the partnership side thing I think is worth mentioning is constructive feedback. Like him and I have a desire just to like build the best customer focused product that we can. And like when one of us do something that does not align with that, like we call each other out and we talk through the issue, and like we identify how we're gonna resolve it, and we do it and we move forward, and that's it. And it's like there's no like it's not personal, right? It's about that shared vision and that commitment to building like a successful business together, and ultimately serving our customers. So
yeah, absolutely. it's like as we've hired more skilled individuals into our company,
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of times where I've had to kind of step back and take some feedback from an employee that's like, hey, we should handle this way, or but just being open and accepting of that of feedback and being able to shift maybe some characteristics that you have, or maybe it's some decision that you're trying to make. I think it's extremely important.
Yeah.
So where does this currently have you at today? You're going for your second round of investment, which is pretty exciting. I think there's a lot of people out there in the world that have not been involved in going for investment. Uh, what has this process been like?
Yeah, so yeah, we're very fortunate. We've kind of put a plan in place from the get go, and we're in the process of executing on that plan. So several years ago, we raised like a small seed round for the company, and we put that, I think, to pretty good use. Like it helped us stabilize product features, sales and marketing, build a customer base, and like build the company up to a level. And we said we were going to raise again once we got to the point where like the product was ready to scale effectively. Like we needed not more cash to survive, but more cash to scale the business, which
Yeah.
is very typical for high tech, high growth ventures in emerging technology fields. They're typically pretty capital intensive on that side of
Mhm.
things, and there could be really good ROIs if you put cash into something with that effort. So we're in the process of we're working with legal right now to be able to do that, but things I could share include the investment vehicle that we're using, the process to go from deciding you want to raise to what like a close looks like. So we're using what's called a SAFE, which is a simple agreement for future equity. There's tons of templates online. It's low cost,
Mhm.
where it allows to set basically a certain equity stake for a future valuation or round on the company. So we set that at like the private investment level. It allows us to bring cash into the company and minimize kind of the um, the work effort up front that guarantees um, long term involvement for the investors themselves.
Gotcha.
Um,
Is this also like the phase where like kind of shares are being initiated?
well, it's interesting. So we had so this is what's really cool. So the first time we did a safe, and so the for the safe we did the first time, those are now converting into shares for the initial investors based on
Gotcha.
this valuation. So every time we move forward, it's basically, yeah, it's guaranteed that they get those shares moving forward. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so we have certain investors that are going to be official shareholders, and then the new ones we bring on, it's guaranteeing their place in the company for the next phase of growth. And we'll plan to raise a Series A in the next 12 to 24 months. For probably the final raise we'll do of the company before we do, hopefully, if we're fortunate, like another growth effort and then an exit from the company at that point. So
So what is the difference between like the phase of investment you're in now versus a Series A?
yeah, so it's really like the amount of money. I think I'm not an expert in this, but I believe there's with the IRS and securities laws, like depending on the amount, it just goes into different categories. So the safe is allowed up to a certain, I think it's like up to around $1 million, and then thereafter you would, I think it would go directly into a share because you're starting to get into bigger dollars, you're getting to bigger equity amounts. So it would go into like
Yeah.
a more like controlling interest, board seats, stuff like that. Whereas at these earlier stages, like because the safe is for less amount, like those type of positions are not necessary to give up within the company. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then from like a Series A to an exit, what does that kind of look like?
I haven't. Well, my partner's had an exit before. They were acquired by another company that like leveraged their technology and is doing straight like very well.
Gotcha.
So for us, what I could say is we believe that there's certain large corporations that will be able to like that are already using technology like ours, but are able to
Yeah.
deploy it at 10 to 100x the cost of what we do. So we believe
Yeah.
that there will be an opportunity for like a larger industrial company that can acquire the company and the technology and build it into their portfolio that will help them like
Yeah.
have an evolution to their next phase over like decades to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, there's a lot of companies that are developing like IoT type of devices, and like Ballot has like some IoT devices, and something like this is, I would assume, somewhat similar to put it into their portfolio.
Yeah, so I agree. There's a lot of IoT devices out there. I think what is a little bit different is like some of the things we have a little bit different is we do a lot on the API side in and out with like other software. So we don't do just machine data. We do like corporate data, finance data, materials data, scheduling data, and then we have an artificial intelligence engine. So I look at this as like this empowers what like the value we're able to provide, but this isn't the value, right? This just enables the data extraction, which is very in and of itself is it's like you said, it's its own company. But how you use that data to do like real time controls or give someone the right information, considering other aspects. Like a big way we use it is like, yeah, I think that um, the the way that also there's a ton of like what I've learned like working on this company is within like kind of manufacturer IoT. There's so many different like software stacks and systems and the way data gets processed. There's a lot to it, and there's you probably see this as well that although like this technology is here and it's available, like it's barely being like utilized at this point. Like
Yeah.
there's like if you think about the industrial revolution, like from 100 years ago, like we're still in a large part operating in the same manner, and I honestly
Yeah.
believe like this is going to be another like we're at the very start of a new industrial revolution right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like data like within manufacturing, like machine level, where people are still taking production numbers down on paper and reporting it back to the office and having to manually enter them into
I
computers.
mean, almost all of our clients. That's how like, and I mean, these guys are doing volume out of their operations. Exactly, we call it from pen and paper to Industry 4.0. We have like, I mean, that's what's cool about like what we offer is you don't need to put in other like these complex software systems. Like you just jump literally from handwriting stuff to full on Industry 4.0 in the matter of like weeks.
Where do you kind of foresee the company going in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, so when we do this raise now, we have a good foundational product and we want to obviously like maintain that, but artificial intelligence is our big push. We have some pretty neat tool sets that are already available. Like one, for example, would be like you said, notes. Like operators still leave a lot of notes about what might be going on with the process that just can't be captured from certain things.
I remember. Yeah.
So we use AI to actually read those notes, and then we could take those notes and alert people to say like this, you need to go like work on this thing right now because someone just said something. Whereas traditionally it just goes in a database and you review it the next day and it's too late. So much of this stuff is like the information's there, but it's not digestible and is not leveraged at the right time. And I believe that's the issue with efficiency. It's not about people's inability to be inefficient. It's just like the way problems and solutions are able to work together is too disjointed right now. So what we want to do is use artificial intelligence to highlight the issue, identify where the issue's happening, and ultimately help provide the solution to like implement the solution as fast as possible. Because it's just like you're only as good as your most recent bottleneck, and bottlenecks are going to change. Like if you have like a bottleneck that's less of an issue than the current one, that bottleneck doesn't matter, right? So it's like, how do you just keep knocking off bottleneck after bottleneck to keep things just flowing smoothly, getting product out the door as quickly as possible?
I think one thing interesting you brought up is like combining AI with your system. that's something that we're definitely like looking at, and the thing is like what tool emerges, what AI system emerges that ends up being the best partner in being able to expand your capabilities. So at some point, we'll be able to write robot programming programs, PLC programs through AI by just talking to it. But it's about building like a layer along with the AI, and the AI landscape is going to change very quickly. And so what our partner is in that is going to be based on who's kind of the leader in that space.
So you feel like the writing of the programs is like the most applicable use case for the AI in what you do?
I would say so. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, have you tested stuff out? Like even with like,
Some stuff. Yeah. A little
okay.
bit. Yeah. Yeah. It's just definitely not up to par. Yeah.
I bet, yeah, I bet you there's what. Have you tried to upload your own programming dictionaries before making requests?
Not
I
really.
think if you did
Did
that,
very little. Very little.
yeah, I think if you like were able to acquire like a text-based dictionary of the program, like the PLC programming language you're using, and then prompted it, I think you might get fantastic results. And that might be readily available now. We could work on that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
should link up. I was doing some stuff yesterday with that where it was like wasn't able to give an answer, but as soon as I fed it the background information, it was like, yeah, it was good.
So what are some of the things that individuals navigating their career can kind of take away from these experiences that you've had as a business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer. Like we all only live once, and I think it's important to as early as possible, like iterate through what drives an individual, and that's different for every person. And a big like conundrum with that is like I like as much as I love technology, like when I'm not like when I don't need to work, it's the last thing I want to be around. Like I want to be outside, away from it, and that I learned earlier on about like understanding like what my passions were, and for some people like work passion meets personal passion. So it's like, okay, I like snowboarding and mountain biking, surfing. Do I want to just like go engineer those products? But it was like, okay, actually, like those don't need to be the same. So I found a passion in product development, like holistically across multiple industries and manufacturing, like separate from that. So I think once I was able to like live with those differences, it let me lean a lot deeper. Like I like more naturally like created this snowball effect where like now I'm in it and there's like no turning back. And yeah, I love what I do.
So you're saying like one thing that you've done is like you've learned to like keep your personal and business passions kind of separate and be okay with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. Like, and I have like on the like certain times of during the day, like it's for my family. Like I really try to separate those items, and on the weekend, like I make sure to just find like time to do those other things that I love that's outside of work. Don't get me wrong, I unfortunately not unfortunately, but like I work on like yeah on the weekends still. Like I'm not just doing that,
Yeah.
but there's a time and period where I put it down and I'm like intentionally unreachable because I think the balance of that is also really important. So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I've kind of gotten pretty good at being able to segregate the two. Like when I go home, just being kind of done with like work things. I'm still available in like the chat space and stuff like that. But so I almost have to like reintegrate. Sometimes there's like some like passion things that I want to do that are like business related, and so I kind of like will integrate those in a little bit. So like maybe like one day I took the kids into the shop and was letting them like program around on the robot, like jog the robot around and stuff, and like so that was like a cool way to like take my hobby of being able to mess with robots and stuff and like mix it with family stuff.
mhm. I couldn't agree more with that. And my dad had a like web development marketing company growing up. So like, I used to, when I had days off from school, he would bring me around to meetings. I used to love that as a kid. And yeah, with my son, like last night, I was doing some stuff on the 3D printer, like getting him involved with that. And like the educational portion of business is so important. I have one of our neighbors. She's not even in college yet, but I hired her as a technician, and like just being able to like see other people create learn and then like form their own passion for this type of stuff and realize how
Yeah.
fun and cool it is to make neat stuff and to develop. And also like she's seen like the early stage stuff. The stuff we were doing last night was a manufacturing problem that we were working to like resolve effectively, right? Which there's always problems in manufacturing. That's what we do. We just solve problems all
Right.
day long.
Right. Yeah, and it's like super cool to be able to like facilitate that and be part of somebody's like um, entry and just experience into this industry.
Yeah, like that's one of my favorite parts at this point is I think once you realize now that I have a little bit more experience, like newer people coming either whether they're doing their own internships. I've hired like over 15, 20 co-ops back at my university over the last decade, but I've been getting some just like nice messages seeing it's making a difference. So I think for even those that are young, like that's going to be you one day. And it's like kind of a pay it forward type of situation where it's really important for each new generation to just like share and make sure we continue to teach. And it's not about teaching, it's about like creating an environment for people to love what they do. I think is because if you're able to do that, then like the learning and the passion and the quality work like that'll come as a result, whether that's in our employees, our partners, or our children. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think one that's important for me is just presenting the opportunity to people. Like, especially if they just like, there's so many people that don't have a clue of like what path to take, like zero guidance in their personal lives. Maybe parents don't guide them for even tell them to go to college and stuff like that. And so I'm really passionate about anything I can do to try to help facilitate like uh, that issue there.
what are ways you do that out of curiosity? Like what have you seen work
Sure.
towards that?
I mean, so one of the primary things is like just this podcast. So like doing this podcast and like just giving experience to individuals and being able to like hear like the stories of everybody about how they've navigated their career, and then just try and do our best at expanding like maybe like the notoriety of like the podcast. Like the podcast is being shared in colleges and stuff now, which is really cool. So that's super cool. But we're still in the beginning phases of it. We've hired some people that are not really from our industry, and we're putting them in like robot programming positions, and so that's a little bit of what we've done. We're still a young company, and so like there's a lot of things that we haven't been able to do just yet. Um, at some point, I'm looking to have like entire schools and stuff like that. So
Cool. Yeah, one of I think for anyone that's like starting in a position, like you've gotten the job or you've gotten an internship, I think this is the first conversation I have on day one. Is like, what do you want to be doing here? Like, what do you want to learn? What are the key elements? Like, I try to because like the company typically has like a lot that it needs, and there's some stuff that just has to get done. But I think the better organizations can align their needs with the desires of their employees will creates like a perpetuation of success. So
right, yeah, no, absolutely. So, any final points to add to the audience and help them in their career?
work hard, have fun, ask questions, don't be scared to fail. I've made tons of mistakes, and just I think what's more important is we can learn, like admit and then learn from our mistakes, and also put into perspective the day to day is really important, easy to lose sight on. Of a lot of times we're not necessarily doing brain surgeon work, and um, look at the big picture. It helps focus on the small stuff. So,
Gotcha. Awesome. Where can people find you at?
yeah, you could find me on LinkedIn if you just search for Zakary Smith, Zachary Tyler Smith, and Matt Inventive. Feel free to connect with me. Send me a message. Be happy to talk, answer any questions, or matt@inventive.com.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the podcast today, Zachary. definitely dropped some valuable points. And
It was great to talk. Yeah, I'm looking forward to staying in contact with you. I know we just met before the end of last year, but it's fun. There's a lot to talk about. So thanks for having me, Malachi.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being on.